Hello everyone, welcome to the video. Welcome to my boyfriend's bedroom floor. This is all the books I have read in Q1 of 2026. I read 12 books in the first quarter of 2026 across, let me check, 3,628 pages. Overall, I'm quite okay with that. I've been having some learnings about my reading this quarter, which is nice. I do think that's more pages than I usually read in a quarter. I don't know, I've never tracked this before, but it feels like I usually read less pages. Although 12 books checks out for me. In terms of reading statistics, this is what my reading curve looks like so far this year. As you can tell, I had exams in February. These are the decades I've read from so far. Again, this fully checks out. I would have, if you had asked me like just on the spot, what are your favorite decades to read from, I would have said the 1950s and 1960s. So this checks out. Also quite a bit of 2010s in here. Okay. In terms of languages read so far, I have 11 read in English, 1 read in German. 2 of the books I've read so far were translations, and the other 10 were in the original language, which unfortunately just meant English in this case. In terms of format, the most I've read so far is ebooks, closely followed by paperbacks, then a mix between either of all the formats, and also 1 audiobook. I don't think I'm going to read I don't expect that this ratio is going to change much. I'm not even sure if a hardback is going to make it into the statistic. And then again, we have 11 new books and 1 reread. I reread Emma, we'll get to it. And this is my genres as per my spreadsheet. This is the genres as per, not Spotify, what's it called? Storygraph. This is the tragic world map I have listen. There's nothing I can say to justify this. This is just plain embarrassing. I'm sorry, I'm going to be better. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and give you a brief review of everything I've read so far. Again, if you see me looking down, I have notes on this stuff, okay? I'm just checking to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. The first book I have read in 2026, what kicked my year off, it was Call for the Dead by Jean le Carré. This is a British spy novel. I think spy novels are going to be my thing this year. I think that's what 2026 is going to be. And in this one, you follow George Smiley. This is the beginning of a series. And George Smiley works at MI6 in the UK, but it's very much not like James Bond. MI6 more like just another boring government desk job, sort of MI6. And he is tasked to evaluate one of the agents of MI6, to like just have a brief conversation about like performance, that sort of stuff. He does that. He says, you know what, everything looks fine. I'm going to give a positive review, be done with it. A couple of days later, he gets a phone call that agent allegedly killed himself. And in his like final letter, he mentioned the pressure of this interview with George Smiley being one of the driving factors, and his wife kind of commemorates that story. And so George is starting to look into what actually happened there. I do have to say, despite the fact that this is technically a spy novel, I would rather categorize it as a murder mystery. So like the personal motives and just finding out who did it were the driving factors in this book. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that it is an incredible spy novel by any means, but it was a good murder mystery. The only critique I had of this book, you can definitely tell it's the debut novel of this author, and my kind of one gripe with it, if you will, was the fact that it was because it was a murder mystery, personal motive and personal stakes in the story are kind of what drive a murder mystery, right? Usually that is what makes a murder mystery interesting, how the characters and their pasts and their potential futures all intersect to make this murder happen. And then in the spy novel, oftentimes the politics, the grander picture is what makes it interesting. And so this was a murder mystery that focused, in my opinion, too much on the bigger picture. And I feel like the actual motive, as well as what the character of this murdered man was going through, I don't know, it was a bit mushy. Like sometimes I was hard pressed to understand what actually was motivating these characters. There were some beautiful passages in this. Only the dream has changed, the blood is the same color, kind of referring to now that we are in the Cold War, there's just this new enemy. It's not the Germans anymore, now it's the Soviets. And when's it gonna stop? And like, when are we going to stop picking a political dream or pursuit to justify bloodshed and violence? That was a really poignant passage, in my opinion. In general, I think it had a very nuanced take on the conflicts of the Cold War. This was published in 1961, by the way. The next book I read was Magnolia Parks Into the Dark by Jessa Hastings. I don't want to dwell too long on this. This came out in 2024, and this is the 5th book in the series. The first book follows Magnolia and BJ. They are allegedly a romantic couple, and they can't figure their shit out. And it's just about very messy, very disgustingly rich people kind of trying to love each other. I love this series, unfortunately. Jessa Hastings has... I don't love Jessa Hastings as much, but I did really enjoy this book. And I had actually like purchased this ebook before I realized that I don't particularly care for Jessa Hastings as a person. So yeah, in terms of plot, obviously I can't tell you what actually happens. I just want to say this was too long. This was like, I think the print copy is like 700 plus pages. And like, I liked that it was long. I think 650 pages maybe would have been the sweet spot for me, but they were just like a handful of scenes that I thought would like come around again, and they didn't, and then it was kind of like, what's the point? Also, the protagonist, Magnolia, I don't really like Magnolia. She's very difficult to like. She's a very complex character. I definitely think she's a well-written character. But especially in this book, I feel like Jessa Hastings leaned into the comical aspects of her character a little bit too heavily. Like I don't know, she's just like, she's very spoiled, and she's like, she would constantly like, when she was angry, she would like stomp her foot on the ground. I'm like, ma'am, you're 27 years old. Get a grip, you know? So yeah. I did cry though. This is the only book so far this year that has made me cry. Next up, my reread of Emma. Oh, I love Emma so much. I love it so much. This is one of the 2 5-stars I've had so far this year. No regrets. I first read Emma in 2021, and I have been meaning to reread it basically ever since. And it is Jane Austen. Is it her longest work or second longest? One of her longest books. So I always kind of put it off, but oh my god, it's such a good book. I've seen so many of the movie adaptations since reading this, and I just had a grand old time with this book. I do have to say, I didn't really realize how unimportant the romance is in this. Like, this is not a romance novel in the way that Sense and Sensibility is a romance novel, or in the way that Pride and Prejudice is a romance novel. This is more, I would say, slice of life almost. It is a lot of vignettes that kind of are strung together. There's not really a plot that goes through the whole thing. I know a lot of people say that, like, oh, it's about this Emma, she's a meddling matchmaker, but in my opinion, that's not really a big part of the book. It's just a string of iconic scenes is what I've written in my notes. And I also do love the character dynamics. When I first read this, and I can 100% agree with past me on that, this is like one of the first, like, in terms of timeline, one of the first iterations of a found family. Like, all of these characters, they're from such different socioeconomic backgrounds, and in theory, they shouldn't really like get along or hang out that much, but they all love each other so much. It's so beautiful. And then I kind of on a whim read a play. I read Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee. This came out in 1962, and this was so good. This was, I mean, am I surprised? Not really. But this was so fantastic. Really absurd, really weird. I think they just cast Gillian Anderson in this. Am I making that up? I feel like Gillian Anderson was just cast as Martha. This was so good. I can't tell you what it's about, really. It's about 2 couples, Martha and her husband. I already forgot his name. It's probably George or something boring like that. They're in like their 50s, I want to say. And then they invite a younger couple to come over to the house after a party at the university where both of the men work. I don't know it's really absurd, it's really weird, it's very tragic and uncomfortable. There's so much going on the entire time, but I think it's definitely worth checking out. Also, just like the character depth. I always think playwriting is so interesting because there's so much you can't do in a play, obviously, like in terms of descriptions and like giving the audience context clues about certain stuff. Like everything you want the audience to know has to be either visualized on the stage, which obviously you can't do when I'm reading the play, or it has to be said by one of the characters. And I find that oftentimes that can sound weird quickly. Like sometimes I find with Shakespeare, it's like, why are you saying that out loud? And in this one, I didn't have that feeling at all. Next up. So the next one is Murder at Archley Manor by Sara Rosett. This is a historic crime novel that came out in 2018. I was gonna say in like the 90s, 70s. No. This is the one audiobook I listened to so far this year. I don't remember where I heard about this. Really enjoyed my time. This follows Olive Belgrave, I think her name is. She is a kind of down on her luck, but still high society educated woman. Her father remarried. She doesn't really like the woman, so she's moved to London trying to find work. It's not really working out for her. This is taking place in the 1920s, I believe. And then one of her cousins gets engaged to a man no one really knows, no one's really met, no one has any history of. He didn't grow up in England, he grew up in India, and so like nobody knows him, no one's ever met him. And the family is suspicious because there's certain clues in his behavior that maybe he's not as high society as he claims to be. And so Olive is like, you know what? I can be a meddling sleuth. I can do that. So her family actually hires her to look into this guy. And then at a party where they're all invited, and it's very glamorous and flapper chic, if you will, this guy gets murdered. And then obviously everyone thinks it's Olive's cousin who was engaged to him. And it's a whole mess. I think this was really fun. The mystery wasn't the most shocking twist I've ever read about, but the characters were compelling. I really liked Olive, and I do think the way this historic setting was implemented into the story worked. Usually I don't really like historical fiction because I read a lot of books that are old. I have read novels written in the 1920s, and in my opinion, most of the historical novels that I've read, they always they sound so inauthentic because they always try to emulate the language of the time, but it never turns out the way the authors think it will, I think. Rosett manages to make the text feel modern/contemporary without messing with the authenticity of the historic setting. So it does feel like a modern novel, definitely, but at the same time, I didn't question that this was taking place in the 1920s, you know? So I had a really good time. I'm definitely going to continue this series. Next up, I read They Do It With Mirrors by Agatha Christie. This is a Miss Marple novel. Don't ask me which one. It came out in 1952. And in this one, Miss Marple meets with a friend, and this friend is concerned about her sister. And so basically through various circumstances, Miss Marple ends up visiting the sister and staying with her for a couple of weeks and to try to figure out what's going on. This sister, she's rich. She is rich. And she and her husband actually have a rehabilitation, I think, center for convicts that they run from their estate. And so they have a bunch of convicted felons living on their grounds, and everything just is off. I can't even really tell you more. Everything just feels slightly off. I do have to say, this one, I really like the characters. There were a lot of cool characters and a lot of in-depth characters. This is one of the shorter Miss Marple novels. It was about 250 pages. I'm always amazed by how well Agatha Christie is able to characterize the protagonists in her novels, because it's so little time and she does it so well. I feel like I really know these people. I did enjoy this one. I definitely was a little worried given the subject matter. There were obviously a lot of mentally ill characters, but in my opinion, it wasn't handled too terribly, I think. I didn't find it offensive in any way. The mystery itself, I didn't find that satisfying, however. I did think the conclusion It was just a little dissatisfying in my opinion. I can't really explain it any further than that. Had a good time though. Okay, I always have a good time with the Miss Marple mysteries. Then I finished The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. This came out in 1905, and Edith Wharton is an author that's been haunting me. I don't really know how to explain it, but ever since I've learned of Edith Wharton as an author and of her works, I've been meaning to read them. I've been meaning to, get into her works, and they just sound so up my alley. I do have to say, I started this right after finishing Magnolia Parks Into the Dark, and funnily enough, the protagonist of The House of Mirth, Lily Bart, she is very similar to Magnolia in a lot of different ways, and I thought that was very interesting because they are in different situations, circumstances, but I feel like if Magnolia had been in the same circumstances as Lily, she would have 100% behaved the exact same way. So that was just kind of a weird parallel that I picked these up like back to back. In this one, we follow Lily Bart. Lily Bart is again a young woman. She grew up very wealthy in New York City, and then her family lost all of their money, essentially. Her family lost all of their money, and then her father passed away, and her mom and her basically lived in poverty, and she's been kind of raised by her mother to marry rich. She was always like, that is what your purpose is. You're going to get our family name back into the good graces. You're so pretty. You're going to find such a good husband. And in her adult life, that is kind of all Lily is attempting to do. She's in her late 20s, so she feels the societal pressure to either settle down or get out of this wealthy social circle, essentially. But here's the thing. Lily is a self-sabotaging bitch. She does get the opportunity multiple times throughout this book to marry rich, and she always talks about how that's all she wants in life. And honestly, okay, we all gotta have be motivated by something. She just wants to marry rich. That is her goal. That is her purpose. That's all she's good for. She believes that's the only thing she can do. But every time opportunity arises, she does something that kind of manipulates the situation to a point where the other person wouldn't want to marry her anymore. And it's very frustrating to read. Also because, like, this is 1905. This isn't 1705. This is 1905. And, like, by no means was this a great time to be a woman. But it also wasn't the most terrible one. And, like, Lily acknowledges this. She is fully... She is fully aware that if she could take up a job somewhere, she could just live off of her very small allowance in a small apartment and like live a good life with someone she actually cares about. She's aware of all of these things, but for some reason she can't get herself to find them more important than being wealthy and being socially accepted by the affluent people of New York City. And it's just a very frustrating reading experience. This was also a lot more depressing than I expected. I kind of thought it was going to be rich people drama. And it is, but it's also very depressing because you just keep Lily is just stuck in this self-sabotaging cycle, and the world around her is not very kind to her. I'm glad I read this. It was good. It was just not what I was really expecting, and that's also why it took me so long to read, because February was a lot. And I just mentally was not in the headspace to actually finish it in February. The next one we have on the list is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. This again came out 2018. Weird. I think 2018 is the year so far I've read from the most. In this one we follow a young woman called April May. April has a shitty office job in a startup. She's a designer, and one night when she's done a lot of overtime, she walks home, she walks from the office to the subway station, and on her way she finds a huge statue. It's like 20 feet tall. It's huge. She doesn't really know what it is. She assumes it's an art project or like a publicity stunt of some sort. She calls up her friend and is like, hey, you gotta see this. We are quirky artists living in New York City. Check this out. So he comes over, he takes his camera. They do like a little skit with the statue and like just kind of make a fun video of it, not really thinking anything. They go home, her friend edits the video, uploads it to YouTube, goes to bed. The next morning they wake up, they are a media sensation because this statue has not only popped up in New York City, they have popped up all over the globe. Nobody knows where they're coming from. Nobody knows what they're doing there. Nobody knows who put them there. And April's video is kind of the one that goes viral. Like she was kind of the first person on scene, if you will. And it's really, really good. It talks a lot about internet fame, being viral, being a person in the public eye. It's so well done. It's such a good character study. The book's written from April's POV, and we mostly see how April thinks, reacts. The other characters are still very fleshed out, in my opinion. I think it's very impressive how Hank Green was able to be so focused on his protagonist, but still give so much character to everyone around her. So this was really good. It's definitely more of a character study than it is like a classic sci-fi novel. But I think Hank Green has a lot to say about the internet and about fame and virality. And that's probably something he's quite familiar with. And I think the way he's done it in this book is so insightful. April is not a very likable character, but she is a very understandable and fleshed out character. Also, this is a series, and I do plan to read the second one. So it's a duology. The second one I think is called A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor. I think all of those words are in the title. I'm not sure if that's the right order, but I do plan to finish the duology. Again, I thought it was really well done and I really enjoyed the writing of this one. Next up, this is the other 5-star I've had so far in 2026. This is like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel. This came out in 1992. It is a magical realism novel about a young woman called Tita. Tita grows up in rural Mexico. It's not really specified date-wise, but I would assume like early 20th century. And she grows up in rural Mexico in like somewhere in the early 20th century, I would say. And she is the youngest of 3 daughters to a very cruel and mean-spirited mother. And in their family, it is tradition that the youngest daughter of any given mother is destined to take care of said mother until she dies. So it is Tita's responsibility to take care of her mother. However, Tita, when she's I think 15 or 16 years old, she falls in love, and the boy asks for Tita's hand in marriage, and her mother is like, no, because Tita needs to take care of me. Did you not listen to the entire family tradition thing? And instead she offers Tita's older sister as his bride, which he does accept. Choices were made. And then we just kind of follow those characters loving each other and hating each other. And it's a lot about food. The whole book is written in recipes. So each chapter kind of starts with a recipe, and then the story is told sometime when Tita, because she's the family cook, when she makes food for the family. As I said, it's magical realism, so there are fantastical elements in this, but the plot is still very much grounded in realistic stories. It was so good. It was so vivid. It was so beautiful. It was so romantic. I can't even describe to you how much I enjoyed this or why I enjoyed it so much. It was so warm and romantic is just all I can say about it. The only thing I wrote in my notes is so beautiful, so strange. It was so good. If you have not read this book, if you have never heard of this book, I'm glad I got to spread the gospel, I guess. This one should definitely be on your radar if you like romantic stories. I'm usually I don't like romance novels, famously. We've been over this. I don't like the contemporary romance genre. We've tried, okay? But romance, like romantic love, is still something I find so deeply fascinating. A concept that I am deeply in love with, and this just explored it in such a beautiful way, and it was just so good. It was just so good. I don't have anything else to say about it. Next up, we have The Amazing Generation by Jonathan Haidt and Cathrine Price. Cathrine Price, yes. This came out in January, I think. If you've been here before, you have probably heard me talk about The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, which is a non-fiction book about how social media has kind of led to this epidemic or pandemic really, of mental health issues in young people. And it was really eye-opening. It was a very important book for me to read, certainly. I think it's a very important book for everyone to read. But the target audience for the anxious generation is parents, teachers, anyone who has like kids in their life now, like adults who have kids in their lives now and want to do the right thing when it comes to social media and media competence and stuff, which is important and great. But it was also very sad because there was so much in that book that at the time nobody was able to articulate to me, like when I was a child, and I necessarily even didn't believe in. And so the fact that nobody in my life had a book like this to help them communicate with me about my social media use, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I'm completely alright with having lost all of my teen years to the internet, whatever. The Amazing Generation's target audience is kids. So this, I would say, is for like anyone under 18, starting at like age 10. Maybe it's very child appropriate. It's partly written as a graphic novel, and it just reiterates a lot of the points of the anxious generation, but instead of kind of being very facts focused and very like how can a parent communicate that to a child, it's very much intended to give children action or like to motivate kids to take action. I wish this book had been around when I was 13. I think this should be obligatory reading in school. Mandatory is the name. This should be mandatory reading in schools, in my opinion. Again, it was a very quick read, but there was so much in there that just would have been so important for me to know, and that I hope a lot of young people will pick this up and will find themselves in a spot where they actively choose to not have social media, because that's really the only thing we can, that like as a society we're able to give kids right now. The only way kids can stay off of social media is if they actually want to, so we need to motivate kids to not want to be on social media, and I think this book does exactly that. Then I read Sheets by Brenna Thummler. This is a graphic novel, again from 2018, and this I just read because I was like bored one day while I was chilling at my boyfriend's place. It's like, you know what? I'm just gonna go to the library to see what pops up. And I remembered that they had this in their YA section, so I decided to pick it up because this is one of the Books Unbound books. So Books Unbound is a book podcast I frequently listen to. I've talked about it a couple of times on the channel, and they have like a list of books. I don't know if there's an official list, but there's a list of books that they just keep bringing up time and again. An absolutely remarkable thing is actually also on that list, and Sheets is like the graphic novel they keep bringing up and they keep recommending. And I've been meaning to read it, I think ever since 2018, honestly, when it first came out. I heard about it back then, I just never got around to it. So yeah, anyway, I went to the library, it was a beautiful day, and they had it in stock, and I just read the entire thing in a sitting. Good times, okay? Good times. In this one, we follow Marjorie, who, after her mother passed away a couple of months ago, is now basically running the family laundromat on her own. She has a young brother who's too young to be of any use, and a father who's grieving too much to be of any use, and so she's basically running the business on her own. There's this weird antagonist character that wants to buy the laundromat to put a luxury hotel on top of it. And on the other side, we have Wendell, who is a young boy who drowned and is now a ghost. And he somehow decides to leave the ghost land and go to the human world because he's very lonely in the ghost land. Nobody really likes him. He doesn't have any friends. And he finds the laundromat because it's full of sheets. And all ghosts wear sheets. This was very cute. I do have to say, obviously when Marjorie finds out that her laundromat is being haunted, she isn't excited necessarily. And so her being kind of very annoyed, scared, afraid, stressed about the fact that there's a ghost, to them being like friends, was a little bit quick in my opinion. I didn't really feel there was any reason why their dynamic suddenly shifted. Other than that, the art style is so beautiful. The vibes are so beautiful. This would be like the perfect fall graphic novel. So yeah, it is a beautifully crafted book. This one I didn't mention any translators. I'm so sorry. This one was translated from, because I read the German copy, from the American English to German by Matthias Wieland. Okay, and then the last book, we have read in quarter one Casino Royale by Ian Fleming. This book came out in 1951, and as I said, I'm in my spy era. I am coming to learn about myself. I love the spy genre. I think it might be my favorite subgenre of action movies. Like a good spy action movie, like Mission Impossible does something for me. Me and my boyfriend started watching all of the James Bond movies about 6 months ago. We're not watching them in order, we're just watching whichever ones sound good in the moment. But I've been meaning to read one of the books just out of curiosity, and obviously Casino Royale is the first in the series. And this was surprisingly good. The writing was really well done in my opinion. It was very descriptive and atmospheric without being too flowery. Obviously, in my notes, I've written the vibes were high, but so was the misogyny. And that is really all I can say on Casino Royale. I think if you like the James Bond movies, it's definitely worth checking out. Again, it was surprisingly well written. There were some really interesting moral conflicts James Bond was going through. He too had kind of this moment of like, who decides who the enemy is? And is this guy really my enemy just because he is doing for his country exactly what I'm doing for my country? And there were a lot of like moral discussions. That stuff was really good. In general, James Bond was a surprisingly three-dimensional character. I'm firmly of the belief James Bond is a misogynist pig, and he always should be a misogynist pig. I think that is a core of his character. I don't want a woke James Bond. That is my personal humble take on the next James Bond. I have so many ideas what they should do with the next James Bond. I've been thinking about making a video on it. Anyways, and just like surprisingly a lot of depth. I didn't expect that at all. Maybe because I still have this perception of the movies of being mostly like fun, action, male fantasy movies that don't really, the point of the movies is not to have any character depth. But obviously in a novel, for me, action in a novel doesn't work as well as it does in film. And so I'm glad that is not what this book relied on. I thought it was so well done. It's also, the movie, very book accurate. Like obviously it takes place in a different time because that was a contemporary book in 1951. And the movie was a contemporary movie in like when did it come out? 2005? 2008? I don't know. So obviously like different time. But overall, it was very true to the novel. Vesper Lind, the female protagonist, I'm of the personal opinion that James Bond just shouldn't interact with women. That's all I'm gonna say on that. Yeah, I didn't really like the very ending. Something happens at the end of the book that kind of puts James Bond mentally where he was before the beginning of the book. And the way he thinks of that and the way that he goes through that, it undoes a lot of his character growth from the book. Either way, surprisingly good time. I really want to collect the James Bond novels now. These are nowhere to be found. I have been searching because like for the first one, for Casino Royale, you can still buy like new copies, but the further in the series you get, the harder it is to find them. I would also really like to have these specific covers. If any of you like know anything, okay, hook me up because I would really like to have these. Yeah, so overall, how do we feel on quarter one? I am very happy, honestly. I do think overall I never spend as much time reading as I want, obviously. I feel like that's something most people can relate to. I always feel like I could be reading more, but I'm coming to learn of myself that I prefer to read a book in a short period of time, like read an entire novel in 3 or 4 days and then just not read for a week rather than reading a little bit every single day. I don't know really why, but I've always kind of read that way now that I'm thinking about it, but this is the first time I'm actually able to put it into words. So I'm excited but hesitant to keep looking out for that pattern. Obviously, we gotta address the elephant in the room. I have had 2 5 stars in the first quarter of 2026. If you're new here, if you don't know me, hi. I love reading, reading doesn't love me back. I usually have like 3 5-star reads in a whole year. In the last 2 years, I've had 3 5-star reads within the year. The fact that I've already had 2 and it's the 1st of April, crazy work. Insane work. I'm so excited. If I could keep this up and have 2 5 stars per quarter and like end the year with 8 5 stars, that is insane. Unheard of numbers for me. That would be great, actually. I'm also very excited to keep exploring the espionage spy book genre. If you have any recommendations, let me know. I think I'm definitely going to read another James Bond novel. So yeah. Let me know, how was your first quarter? How are your goals? How are you doing? Are you happy with your reading? What was your favorite book of the first 3 months so far? Please let me know down below. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!